eventful life, having met all sorts of famous people such as Cindy Crawford, lots of jazz bands, 80 years of meeting fabulous people. I thought you'd like to know that.
It's almost dawn in a jungle in India when I'm awoken by the sound of scratching at the door of our tent. As I open my eyes, it's quite dark still, and I can make out the shape of a four-legged animal furiously clawing at the door of our tent. And he's growling loudly. Madam Toastmaster, fellow Athenians, and to all our very, very welcome guests. In November 2005, I went on one of my quite regular trips, bike expeditions, to Rajasthan, which is a province in northern India. And the trip was entitled the Rajasthan Tiger Trail, and we would be cycling from Agra, which is where the Taj Mahal is, to Jaipur. Now, I'm not really the type of person into kind of lying on beaches. That's not my type of holiday, really. And I much prefer a holiday where you can really get to see the country. And travelling a country on a bike is absolutely perfect for that, because you're just cycling along, you see something interesting, just get off the bike and go and have a look. And you can go and chat with people as you're going through tiny shanty towns and little villages, and it's ideal. And I've done many of these types of trips before. And usually when I do such a trip, I don't know any other participants beforehand, but it's never been a problem, because when I do the trips, I'm always raising money for Guide Dogs for the Blind. And almost all the people on there are raising money for some particular charity. And in my experience, if you're raising a few grand for a charity, you've probably got quite a nice character, and certainly that's what I've experienced so far, and I've got some really close friends from the trips that I've done. Anyway, so for this expedition, we met at Heathrow Airport, and there was 15 of us to be cycling on the Rajasthan Tiger Trail. And we got to know each other in the airport and on the actual flight. And we landed in Delhi. And actually, before I go any further, have you been to Delhi? If you have, could you raise your hand? Okay, so we've got a few people here, but there's quite a lot who haven't been to Delhi. How can I explain Delhi? Delhi is a crazy kaleidoscope of colour, smells and sound. It's an amazing place, and there are lots of things you see there that you would not see in most cities in the world. Lots of animals and sights on the street. On the street, a typical situation. I mean, the streets are just absolutely swarming with all kinds of things, with motorcyclists, mopeds, cars, buses, people, and then animals. Right in the middle of the street, you'll see dogs, cows, camels, even elephants in the middle of the street. Delhi is something else. And you have to have nerves of steel just to cross the road, because the way they drive there, it's like they've got some kind of a death wish, I'm telling you. But I mean, it really is kind of sensory overload, but it's a fantastic place. Anyway, so we had to take a train to get to Agra. And it seemed half of Delhi was on our train with us, most of them being on the roof of the train. And some of them hanging on to the sides of the train as we're speeding along the tracks. It's something to be seen, honestly. We eventually arrived in Delhi. And sorry, we arrived in Agra. And as we got to the Taj Mahal, wow, it's hard to describe it. It's really awe-inspiring, this amazing structure. And they get millions of people go to visit the Taj Mahal each year. And most of them seem to be all around the Taj Mahal to arrive, because the queue was hours to get in the place. But we eventually got in. And it's just such a majestic place, it really is. But we were there to cycle with the Rajasthan Tiger Trail. So we soon left the Taj Mahal, and we went out to meet our tour guides. There was two local guys who were going to be cycling with us, who knew the terrain really well. And we were given our state-of-the-art bikes. Well, not quite. I mean, the bike that I got wasn't quite as fast or as comfortable as maybe the bike I'm used to cycling here in London, but it would be a bit churlish to complain when you looked at the state of some of the bikes that most local people were riding. This was better than what 99% of people would be riding. And although Agra and Delhi are kind of crazy. Once you actually get out of the big cities, it's actually quite peaceful. And we were cycling along streets, and we weren't actually going through any major urban centres. And you're riding along, and you're passing people. There's like carts being pulled by oxen and camels, and people riding on elephants. And all these animals are really brightly decorated with face paint all over their bodies. And just one of the factors that made this a really fascinating ride. But the reason it was called the Rajasthan Tiger Trail was we were cycling past the Ranthambore National Park, which is this huge park dedicated to wildlife with all sorts of animals in there. And we managed to get on the safari and actually go around on a couple of jeeps looking around the park. And one of the main attractions of the Ranthambore National Park is the Bengal tiger, a majestic animal. And we were lucky enough to witness one of these tigers bringing down a gazelle not so far from our jeep. It was an amazing sight. And later that night, we were camping just outside the park gates. And I was sharing a tent with a guy called Mick. And our tent was furthest away from all the other tents, and we were quite near the trees. And so our tent was pretty small. You could just about fit 2 people in. And so we're closing up the tent for the night, and you've got these like flaps, you've got a bit of rope, and you put it through these eyelets, and you take it down to the bottom, and you kind of tie a knot at the bottom. And Mick was in a sleeping bag closest to the door, and we decided to crash early because we had another long ride in the morning. Next thing I know, I hear this frantic scratching sound. And it's almost dawn, and I open my eyes, and I can see this animal in the darkness, furiously clawing at the doors of the tent. And I can hear this loud growl, and the animal's almost in the tent. And I shout as loud as I possibly can. I grab the first thing I can find, which happens to be a book, and I throw it, and it hits the animal as he jumps onto Mick's sleeping bag. And Mick, amazingly enough, up to that point, was still asleep. And a combination of Mick's sudden movement and my shouting and the book hitting it made the animal flee from the tent. And as he went, I realised it was a wild dog. And the commotion that was caused by all this, all the other people came running to our tent to find out what was going on. And I think if I'd have been hooked up to a heart rate monitor during that, it would have gone through, it would have broken the scale. I was so scared. But looking back, this was called the Rajasthan Tiger Trail. And I could have been facing the eye of the tiger. But on the other hand, you could say I was saved by the Jungle Book. Madam Toastmaster.